Commander Han stared at the data tablet in his hands, his eyes growing wider with each swipe. The screen showed his face, a brief description of his career as a human diplomat, and most alarming of all, thousands of interested matches from females across dozens of alien species. "I never created this profile," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his dark hair. The application called itself Galactic Shirt, Find Your Stellar Match, and appeared to be extremely popular based on the download statistics. Han's profile had a special tag that read Verified Human Male with a gold star beside it, as if this were some rare and valuable designation. A notification pinged. Another match. This one from a high-ranking Mersian diplomat he'd met just last week. In her message, she'd written, "Your species' capacity for emotional expression is most intriguing. Perhaps we could discuss human concepts of romance over dinner." Han set the tablet down and paced his quarters. This explained a lot about the strange behavior he'd been noticing since his assignment to Nexus 7 3 months ago. The lingering touches from Ambassador Lyra, the accidental encounters with Minister Tella in the station's recreation areas, the constant invitations to private meetings. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Dr. Kim stepped inside, her expression serious. As the station's human xenobiologist, she was one of the few humans Han could truly call a friend here. "You found the tablet," she said, nodding at the device on his desk. "You knew about this?" Han asked. "Not until today. One of my lab assistants, a Jorian female, let it slip during our research." She was quite embarrassed. Dr. Kim walked over and picked up the tablet. "It seems human males have become something of a commodity in certain circles." Han frowned. "But why? Humans aren't particularly special by galactic standards. We're not the strongest, fastest, or smartest species out here." "That's what I intend to find out," Dr. Kim said. "But first, you should probably know that your diplomatic function tomorrow night has been moved to the Grand Hall. They needed a bigger space due to unexpected interest from various embassies." Han groaned. "Great. More alien women staring at me like I'm some exotic delicacy." "Not just you," Dr. Kim corrected. "All 7 human males currently stationed on Nexus 7 have been invited as special guests of honor." The next evening arrived too quickly. Han adjusted his formal uniform as he approached the Grand Hall. The normal diplomatic functions usually hosted 30 to 40 representatives. Tonight, the line to enter stretched down the corridor, with at least 200 aliens waiting to get inside. "Commander Han," a voice called. Han turned to see Station Director Oro approaching. The tall, four-armed Zentari looked unusually concerned. "Director," Han greeted with a slight bow. "Commander, I feel I must warn you," Oro said quietly. "Tonight's function has generated unusual interest. If you feel uncomfortable at any point, my security team is under orders to escort you out immediately." "I appreciate that, but I'm sure I can handle a diplomatic reception," Han replied. Oro's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Perhaps, but you should know that 3 separate marriage proposals have already been submitted to your embassy this morning." Han nearly choked. "Marriage proposals?" "Yes, all from quite prestigious families, I might add." Oro seemed both amused and concerned. "Whatever it is about human males that has captured the interest of the galactic community, you seem to be at the center of it." Inside the Grand Hall, Han immediately felt the weight of hundreds of eyes turning toward him. The room fell strangely quiet for a moment before conversations resumed at a higher, more excited pitch. Ambassador Lyra was the first to approach, gliding across the floor in flowing robes that highlighted her blue-tinged skin. "Commander Han," she said, bowing deeply. "Your presence honors us all." Han noticed her skin flushing slightly violet around her neck and face, a sign of emotional intensity in her species. "The honor is mine, Ambassador," he replied formally. "I have been researching human customs," she said, stepping closer than diplomatic protocol typically allowed. "I find your species' concept of dating quite fascinating. The idea of spending time together before making reproductive commitments seems efficient. Before Han could respond, Minister Tella appeared with a small box in her hands. "Commander, I've brought you a gift," she said. "A delicacy from my homeworld that is only shared with potential life partners." Han accepted the box awkwardly. "That's very kind, Minister, but I wouldn't want to." "Excuse me," interrupted a tall, elegant alien with feathered ridges along her skull. "I am High Priestess Neri of the Velusian Collective. Our species values intellectual compatibility above all. I believe humans share this value, do they not?" Within minutes, Han found himself surrounded by a growing circle of alien diplomats, all female, all unusually interested in human culture, biology, and, most uncomfortably, mating practices. Across the room, he spotted Dr. Kim documenting the interactions with a small recording device. The other human males were experiencing similar attention, though none seemed to be drawing quite the crowd Han had attracted. As the evening progressed, Han managed to extract himself long enough to step onto a quiet balcony. He took a deep breath of the station's recycled air, grateful for the moment of peace. "Quite overwhelming, isn't it?" came a voice from the shadows. Han turned to see a human man he didn't recognize leaning against the railing. "I'm Dr. Lee," the man said. "Xenosociologist. I've been studying this phenomenon for almost a year now." "What phenomenon?" Han asked. Dr. Lee smiled. "The reason every alien woman in the galaxy seems to dream of marrying the human man." Dr. Lee led Han through the restricted research section of Nexus 7. They passed through 3 security checkpoints before reaching a laboratory marked Xenobiological Research. Authorized personnel only. "I've been working with Dr. Park on this project since the first reports started coming in," Dr. Lee explained as they entered. "What we've discovered is, well, it's going to change human-alien relations forever." The laboratory was bright and sterile. Screens around the room displayed various biological readings, chemical formulas, and brain scans. Dr. Park stood in the center, manipulating a holographic display of what appeared to be human biochemistry. She was so focused on her work that she didn't notice the mentor. "Dr. Park," Lee called, "I've brought our most popular test subject." She looked up, her serious expression softening slightly when she saw Han. "Commander, thank you for coming. Your situation has provided valuable data." "Happy to help," Han said, though he wasn't feeling particularly happy about any of this. "Dr. Lee says you figured out why alien females are so interested in human males." Dr. Park nodded and expanded the holographic display. "It's in your sweat, essentially," she explained, pointing to a complex molecular structure floating in the display. "Humans produce a complex pheromone cocktail that's completely undetectable to us, but acts like a powerful attractant to numerous alien species." Han frowned, studying the display although he understood little of the scientific notation. "If that's true, why haven't we noticed before now?" "Limited exposure," Dr. Park said, bringing up a timeline showing human expansion into space. "Humans were isolated until 50 years ago. Now that we have regular contact with other species, the effect is becoming apparent." Han watched as Dr. Park pulled up another display, this one showing brain scans of various alien species. "Ambassador Lyra provided these scans," Dr. Park explained. "She was reluctant at first, but I believe scientific curiosity won out over her embarrassment." The scans showed bright areas of activity in certain regions of Lyra's brain. "What am I looking at?" Han asked. "This is Ambassador Lyra's brain in a neutral state," Dr. Park said, showing one image. "And this is her brain when exposed to a fabric that had been worn by a human male for several hours." The second image showed significantly more activity, with several regions glowing brightly. "The results are undeniable," Dr. Park continued. "Human proximity triggered pleasure centers in her brain comparable to powerful stimulants. In some cases, just being in the same room as a human male creates a mild euphoric effect." Han felt increasingly uncomfortable. "So we're like a drug to them?" "Not exactly," Dr. Lee interjected. It's more complex than that. The effect isn't just chemical, it's psychological too. Dr. Park nodded. There's more to it. She continued, bringing up comparative data across species. It seems to affect primarily females of most species, and they're specifically attracted to human males. Great, Han muttered. So I'm basically wearing alien catnip. An apt description, Dr. Park said, not catching his sarcasm. But interestingly, the effect varies significantly by species. Silesian females like Ambassador Lyra show some of the strongest responses. Axori females, like Minister Tella, show moderate responses but seem more affected by the sound of human male voices. Han remembered how Tella had asked him to read poetry from Earth at their last meeting. That explained a lot. What about male aliens? Han asked. Why don't they seem affected? That's where it gets really interesting, Dr. Lee said, taking over the display. Male aliens actually have a mild negative reaction to human males. Nothing hostile, just a subtle discomfort. It appears to be an evolutionary response. They unconsciously recognize a reproductive competitor. Han sat down heavily on a nearby stool. So I'm causing an interstellar incident just by existing. Not just you, Dr. Park clarified. All human males. Though our data suggests that the effect is stronger with certain individuals. You, Commander Han, produce a particularly potent biochemical signature. Lucky me, Han said dryly. The laboratory door slid open, and a research assistant entered carrying a sealed container. The samples from the diplomatic function, Doctor, the assistant said, handing the container to Dr. Park. Excellent, Dr. Park said. We collected air samples from last night's function, she explained to Han. They should help us isolate the exact compounds involved. Han watched as she carefully opened the container and placed a small device inside. The device began analyzing the contents immediately. Is there any way to neutralize this effect? Han asked. Some kind of medication or treatment. Dr. Lee and Dr. Park exchanged glances. We're working on that, Dr. Lee said cautiously. But there are complications. What kind of complications? Han asked. Political ones, came a new voice from the doorway. Han turned to see Captain Min, the human military liaison to Nexus 7, entering the laboratory. His expression was grim. Commander Han, Captain Min said with a nod. I see you've been briefed on our situation. Some of it, Han replied. But I'm guessing there's more. Captain Min nodded. Earth Central Command received 12 formal alliance proposals this morning, all from species with eligible females seeking human husbands. Han's eyes widened. Alliance proposals. As in political alliances. Yes. 3 of them included access to technology we've been trying to acquire for decades. 2 others offered exclusive mining rights in resource-rich systems. Captain Min's expression remained serious. The Council is considering the diplomatic advantages. You can't be serious, Han said, standing up. They're thinking about using this biological quirk as a diplomatic tool. It wouldn't be the first time biology influenced politics, Dr. Lee pointed out. Many species use reproductive alliances to cement political relationships. But humans don't, Han insisted. No, we don't, Captain Min agreed, which is why I'm here. We need to understand exactly what's happening before we make any decisions. Dr. Park, do you have a timeline for when you'll have definitive results? Dr. Park checked her displays. We need more data. Specifically, we need to understand why the effect is stronger with some human males than others, and why alien females respond differently by species. I can help with that, Han said reluctantly. Ambassador Lyra has invited me to a cultural exchange event tomorrow. Several species will be present. Excellent, Dr. Park said, her eyes lighting up with scientific enthusiasm. We'll need biological samples from you before and after the event, and perhaps we can place discrete sensors to measure responses from the various females present. Han sighed. So I'm officially a scientific experiment now. For the good of human-alien relations, Captain Min said, not quite suppressing a smile. Consider it your patriotic duty, Commander. As they discussed the details, Han couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited him. If his sweat could cause this much diplomatic chaos, what other biological secrets might humans be unwittingly carrying into the stars? Han followed Ambassador Lyra through the winding corridors of Nexus 7's lower levels. These areas were far from the polished diplomatic sectors he typically frequented. Here, the walls showed the station's age, and the lighting flickered occasionally. "Are you sure about this?" Han asked, ducking to avoid a low-hanging pipe. "Trust me," Lyra said, her blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. "If you want to understand what's happening, this is the place." They stopped at what appeared to be a maintenance door. Lyra pressed her hand against a hidden scanner, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. "They're expecting us," she said. "I told them you were open-minded." Han stepped through the doorway into a surprisingly large chamber. The room had been converted from some kind of storage area into a gathering space, with comfortable seating arranged in a circle. The walls were covered with images of Earth, landscapes, cities, and most notably, human couples. Wedding photos, families at parks, elderly pairs holding hands. Around 30 aliens filled the room, from at least a dozen different species. All were female, as far as Han could tell. When he entered, the buzz of conversation died immediately, replaced by a charged silence. A tall, willowy alien with iridescent skin approached. Her movements were fluid, almost like she was floating rather than walking. "Welcome to the Human Appreciation Society," she said, her voice melodic. "I am Neri, the founder." Han glanced around the underground chamber again, feeling suddenly self-conscious. All eyes were fixed on him, with expressions ranging from curiosity to what he could only describe as admiration. "Thank you for having me," he said, falling back on his diplomatic training. "Ambassador Lyra thought I might learn something here." Neri gestured to an empty seat in the circle. "Please, join us. We were just discussing human family structures." Han sat down carefully, with Lyra taking the seat beside him. The circle of aliens leaned forward slightly, their attention unwavering. "Commander Han," Neri began, "you should know that while we are aware of the biological component of our attraction to human males, this isn't just about biology." She gestured to the images on the walls. "Human males bring something rare to the galaxy, emotional intelligence combined with protectiveness." A small, feathered alien nodded enthusiastically. "In my species, males compete for mating rights, then leave. They have no concept of fatherhood or partnership. Most advanced species evolved beyond pair bonding," added another alien with silver skin and large, dark eyes. "Our males contribute genetic material, nothing more. But humans form partnerships." Han listened, fascinated. The xenobiologists had focused so much on the pheromone effect that they'd completely missed this cultural dimension. "So it's our relationships that attract you?" he asked. "Human concepts of romance, family, and lifelong partnership are considered exotic," Neri explained, pointing to an image of an elderly human couple. "Your stories, your arts, they're filled with love that transcends mere reproduction." An alien with translucent skin and visible internal organs spoke up. "My species reproduces through cellular division. I have no concept of partnership as humans understand it. Yet when I watched your entertainment broadcasts, your romance movies, I felt longing." Han tried to process this information. But surely other species must have similar concepts. "Some do," Lyra said beside him, "but few combine them as humans do. You are protective without being possessive. You form deep emotional bonds but still respect individuality." "You cry," said another alien simply. "Males of my species would rather die than show such emotional honesty." Han found himself the center of an impromptu discussion about human relationship practices. The aliens asked questions about everything from dating rituals to how humans resolved conflicts with their partners. Is it true that human males often form lifelong bonds with a single partner despite having no biological necessity to do so? Asked a reptilian alien with shimmering scales. Many do, yes, Han replied. Though not all relationships last forever. And you care for your offspring directly, not just through providing resources, asked another. Most human fathers are very involved in raising their children, Han confirmed. The meeting continued for hours. Han learned that the Human Appreciation Society had chapters on 12 different worlds, with membership growing rapidly. They shared translations of human literature focused on love and partnership, analyzed human films, and even practiced human courtship rituals as a group. We know that not all human males would be open to interspecies relationships, Neri said toward the end of the meeting. We respect that, but we hope that as our species learn more about each other, more possibilities for connection will emerge. The gathering began to disperse, with many of the aliens approaching Han to thank him for coming. Several handed him small gifts, tokens of appreciation rather than courtship offerings, they assured him. As Han and Lyra prepared to leave, Neri pulled him aside. There's something you should know, she said quietly. Not everyone is pleased with humanity's growing influence in the galaxy. The effect you have on many of us has created tension. What kind of tension? Han asked. There are groups who see interspecies relationships as a threat to their cultural purity, Neri explained. They call themselves species preservation alliances and exist across many worlds. Be careful, Commander. Han nodded, thanking her for the warning. As he and Lyra made their way back to the upper levels, he noticed she seemed unusually quiet. What are you thinking? He asked. Lyra hesitated. I'm thinking about something Neri said, about human males being protective without being possessive. It's appealing. Han wasn't sure how to respond. Their relationship had been strictly professional, though he'd certainly noticed her interest. Ambassador, he began. Lyra, she corrected. After tonight, I think we can use first names. Lyra, he said, feeling a strange warmth at the informality. I need to know how much of your interest in me is because of biology and how much is genuine. She stopped walking and turned to face him. Does it matter? Chemistry brings beings together across the galaxy. What matters is what happens after. Before Han could respond, he noticed a shadow moving at the end of the corridor. Someone was following them. We need to move, he said quietly, taking Lyra's arm. They quickened their pace, turning down a side passage. The footsteps behind them sped up too. Station security, Han said into his communicator. Commander Han requesting immediate assistance in Section 42B. No response. They were too deep in the station's maintenance levels for a clear signal. The corridor ahead split in two directions. Han made a quick decision, pulling Lyra to the right. They rounded the corner and pressed themselves against the wall, listening as the footsteps approached. A figure in dark clothing paused at the junction, then turned toward them. Han could see now it was a male draconid, a species known for their conservative views on interspecies contact. Human, the draconid hissed. Your kind threatens the natural order. Han stepped forward, positioning himself between the draconid and Lyra. We mean no harm to anyone. Your very presence is harmful, the draconid replied. This abomination must end. The alien reached for something at his belt. Han tensed, ready to defend himself and Lyra. Suddenly, the corridor was flooded with light as a maintenance panel opened nearby. A station worker stepped out, startled to find them there. The draconid hesitated, then turned and disappeared back down the corridor. Are you all right? Han asked Lyra when they were alone again. She nodded, but her skin had paled to a lighter blue. It seems Neri's warning was timely. As they made their way back to the diplomatic quarters, Han reflected on everything he'd learned. The attraction between human males and alien females wasn't just biological. It was cultural, emotional, and increasingly political. And now, apparently dangerous. Commander Han woke to the sound of his communication device buzzing urgently. He checked the time, 4:30 station hours, and groaned. Nothing good ever came from calls this early. "Commander Han," he answered, his voice still thick with sleep. "Sir, you need to see this." It was Ju, his communication officer. "Turn on your news feed." Han activated the wall screen in his quarters. Immediately, his own face appeared, alongside headlines in multiple languages. The Universal Standard Translation scrolled across the bottom. "Human attraction, he no meaning on, environment." "What is this?" Han asked, now fully awake. "Someone leaked Dr. Park's research," Ju explained. "The full report, including brain scans and hormone analysis. It's everywhere." Han watched in horror as a well-known galactic news presenter discussed the findings. "Scientists have confirmed what many have suspected," the presenter said. "Human males produce unique biochemical signatures that create powerful attraction responses in females of numerous species. The effect, previously dismissed as rumor, has now been scientifically documented." The screen showed footage of Han at various diplomatic functions, with alien females visibly reacting to his presence. Han recognized Ambassador Lyra, Minister Tella, and several others. The footage had been edited to emphasize their reactions. "This can't be happening," Han muttered. "Sir, that's not all," Ju continued. "The diplomatic channels are exploding. Every embassy on Nexus 7 is demanding information or issuing statements." Han dressed quickly and headed to his office. The corridors were unusually busy for this early hour, with station personnel and diplomatic staff hurrying about. Many stopped to stare as he passed. When he reached his office, his team was already assembled. Their expressions ranged from concern to barely suppressed amusement. "Give me the situation," Han ordered. Ju stepped forward with a data tablet. "The Dremen Empire has banned all human males from their territory," he reported. "The Silesian Republic is offering expedited citizenship to human bachelors. The Axora Confederation has requested an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council to discuss biological regulation policies." Han massaged his temples. "This is a diplomatic nightmare." "There's more," said Dr. Kim, who had joined the meeting. "My research team has been contacted by 17 different governments requesting the formula for the human pheromone compound." "Why would they want that?" Han asked. "Multiple reasons," Dr. Kim explained. "Some want to synthesize it. Others want to develop blockers to protect their females. A few have suggested it might be weaponized." Weaponized. Han couldn't believe what he was hearing. It's sweat, not a bioweapon. The door to his office slid open, and Ambassador Lyra entered. Her normally composed demeanor seemed slightly strained. "Commander Han," she said formally, though her skin flushed violet at the edges. "I apologize for the interruption, but this matter cannot wait." Han gestured for her to continue. "My government wishes to establish a formal courtship protocol for human-Silesian relations," she stated. "The High Council believes structured guidelines will prevent misunderstandings and ensure compatible matches." Han stared at her in disbelief. "Courtship protocol? Ambassador, with all due respect, we're in the middle of a diplomatic crisis. This is precisely why such protocols are necessary," Lyra insisted. "Already, there have been incidents. A human trade negotiator on Silesia received 28 marriage proposals yesterday. 2 Silesian nobles have declared a formal competition for his attention." Han shook his head, trying to process this new information. The room fell silent as he and Lyra looked at each other. "Lyra," Han said carefully, using her personal name despite the formal setting, "how much of your interest in me is biological and how much is personal?" The question hung in the air. The others in the room looked down or found sudden interest in their data tablets. Lyra's expression softened. "Does it matter? Chemistry brings species together. What they build afterward is what counts." Before Han could respond, Ju interrupted. "Sir, I'm receiving an urgent message from Earth Central Command. They're requesting your immediate presence at the Galactic Council session. It begins in 1 hour. The Galactic Council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from all major spacefaring species filled the tiered seating, with many standing in the aisles. The atmosphere was tense, with delegations clustered in tight groups, engaged in hushed conversations. Han took his place at the human delegation's table. Captain Min nodded grimly beside him. "Any advice?" Han asked quietly. "Speak from the heart," Captain Min replied. "That seems to be what got us into this mess in the first place." The council president, a venerable Axori, called the session to order. "We gather today to address the implications of the human attraction phenomenon," he announced. "This biological reality raises significant questions about diplomatic relations, travel restrictions, and potential regulation of human biological material." For the next 2 hours, Han listened as species after species presented their positions. The Dremen representative defended their ban on human males as necessary for social stability. The Silesian diplomat proposed a formal registry system for human bachelors interested in interspecies relationships. The Jorian representative suggested that human males be required to wear pheromone-blocking devices in public spaces. Finally, it was Earth's turn to speak. Captain Min nudged Han forward. "Commander Han will address the Council on behalf of humanity," Captain Min announced. "As someone at the center of this situation, he offers a unique perspective." Han approached the central podium, aware of the thousands of eyes upon him. He had prepared remarks, but as he looked out at the assembled representatives, he set his notes aside. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," he began, "I stand before you not just as a diplomat, but as a human man who has learned much in recent days." The chamber fell silent. Yes, human biochemistry creates unexpected responses in some species. Yes, human social practices, our concepts of partnership, family, and love, differ from many of yours. But these differences need not divide us. Han paused, making eye contact with various representatives. Humanity doesn't want special treatment. We want understanding. These attractions, whatever their source, can lead to greater unity among our peoples. He noticed Ambassador Lyra watching him intently from the Silesian section. Throughout galactic history, differences have brought species together. Trade, knowledge, art, all flow across our boundaries because we are different, not despite it. Perhaps this situation is simply another way the universe encourages us to connect. As Han continued, he saw nodding heads among many delegations. Not all. The Dremen representative looked particularly unmoved, but enough to give him hope. "I propose that instead of bans and regulations, we establish an interspecies cultural exchange initiative. Let us learn from each other openly and honestly. Let those who wish to explore relationships do so with respect and knowledge, and let those who prefer to keep their distance do so without fear or prejudice." When Han finished his address, the chamber remained quiet for a moment. Then, starting from the back, applause began to spread. It wasn't universal. Several delegations remained seated with arms crossed, but it was substantial. As Han returned to his seat, Captain Min gave him an approving nod. "Well said, Commander. Though I suspect this is just the beginning of a very complicated chapter in human-alien relations." Looking at the divided chamber, Han could only agree. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be quite the same again. Commander Han stood on the observation deck of the New Harmony station, gazing out at the vast gathering below. 5 years had passed since the human attraction crisis, as historians now called it. 5 years of diplomatic negotiations, cultural exchanges, and personal discoveries. The massive assembly hall had been specially constructed for this event, the first interspecies family summit. Hundreds of couples filled the space, representing over 40 different species paired with humans. Many had traveled for weeks to attend. "Nervous about your speech?" asked Lyra, her blue fingers intertwining with his. Han smiled at his wife. "Ambassador Lyra, Now, Ambassador Han Lyra, under the dual naming custom they had created, had maintained her diplomatic career even after their union 3 years ago. "A little," he admitted. "It's still strange being the unofficial face of human-alien relationships." A small child with bluish skin and distinctly human eyes ran past them, chasing another child with scaled skin and human hair. The nursery section of the summit was filled with the first generation of human-alien children, some biological, created through advanced genetic compatibility treatments, others adopted across species lines. "Uncle Han," called a young voice. Han turned to see Mina, the daughter of Dr. Kim and her Jorian partner. At 4 years old, she was already showing the quick intelligence of both her parents. "Hello, little one," Han said, crouching down to her level. "Are you enjoying the summit?" "Yes," she said excitedly. "I met 3 other kids like me. We're all different, but the same too." Han smiled as Mina ran back to her new friends. Children always understood the simplest truths that adults complicated. The summit's opening ceremonies were about to begin. Han and Lyra made their way to the stage, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered. Han recognized many faces, some friends, some former opponents who had eventually come around. The Galactic Council President, a Zentari female, stepped to the podium first. "5 years ago, our community faced an unexpected challenge," she began. "The discovery of unique human biochemistry and social practices created fear and uncertainty. Today, we celebrate how that challenge has transformed into opportunity." Han watched the audience, seeing nods of agreement. Not everyone had embraced the changes, of course. The Dremen Empire had maintained its ban on human males for 2 years before gradually relaxing restrictions. Even now, some species kept their distance, preferring to preserve their traditional ways. Several couples shared their stories. A human diplomat and her Axori partner described establishing the first cross-species household on a conservative Axori colony. A human scientist and his Mersian mate explained their work developing medical protocols for interspecies families. Then came Lee, a human terraformer who had caused a sensation by marrying a Dremen scientist named Kel, a union that had once been forbidden by Dremen law. "It wasn't easy," Lee said, standing tall beside his wife. "We faced opposition from her government, my colleagues, even our families. But we discovered something important. Differences make us stronger." Kel nodded. "My people believed that maintaining species purity was essential to our survival. Through my bond with Lee, I learned that diversity actually enhances resilience." Han felt Lyra squeeze his hand as they listened. Their own relationship had faced similar challenges. Though the Silesian Republic had officially encouraged human Silesian unions, many traditionalists had objected to their high-profile marriage. The first year had been particularly difficult as they navigated biological differences, cultural misunderstandings, and the constant public attention. Han had nearly resigned his position after a particularly vicious media campaign by anti-human groups. Lyra had faced discrimination from humans who questioned her motives. Yet they had persevered, and in doing so, had become symbols of what was possible. When it was Han's turn to speak, he approached the podium slowly, taking in the diverse faces before him. "5 years ago, I stood before the Galactic Council as a confused diplomat trying to understand why alien females were suddenly so interested in human males," he began, earning gentle laughter from the crowd. "I've learned a lot since then." Han paused, gathering his thoughts. "We initially believed this was about biology, human pheromones triggering responses in alien physiology. Later, we thought it was about culture, human concepts of partnership being attractive to species with different social structures." He looked across the assembly hall, seeing the couples and families that had formed despite seemingly impossible odds. "But the truth is both simpler and more profound. What we discovered wasn't about humans being special or better. The truth isn't that alien women dream of human men. It's that connection transcends species." Han gestured to the children playing in the nursery area. "Humans didn't bring superior genetics or technology to the galaxy. We brought a reminder that love, partnership, and family are universal desires. And in return, we've received the gift of new perspectives, new ways of understanding what it means to be a family. After the speeches concluded, Han and Lyra visited the nursery. Children of various shapes, colors, and biological compositions played together, their differences unremarkable to them. A small boy caught Han's attention. Half human, half draconid, he was helping a younger child with a puzzle. The draconid species had been among the most resistant to human integration, yet here was living proof that even the deepest divisions could be bridged. "What are you thinking?" Lyra asked, noticing Han's thoughtful expression. "I'm thinking about what Dr. Park told me 5 years ago," Han replied. "That I was basically wearing alien catnip." Lyra laughed, her skin flushing that beautiful violet hue that still captivated him. She wasn't entirely wrong, Lyra admitted, but what began as chemistry became something much more. Han nodded, watching as a group of children started a game that combined elements of human tag and a Silesian coordination ritual. "I see the future in them," he said softly. "Not human, not alien, but something new, the best of all of us." That evening, as delegations from across the galaxy celebrated at the summit's reception, Han found himself speaking with Captain Min, now Admiral Min, who had returned from Earth for the event. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when we first discovered the phenomenon?" Min asked. Han shook his head. "Never. I was just trying to avoid an interstellar incident." "And instead, you helped launch an interstellar revolution," Min replied. "Earth Central Command estimates that over 10,000 human-alien partnerships have formed in the past 5 years. The cultural and scientific exchanges alone have advanced our technology by decades." Han watched as Lyra chatted with a group of new human-alien couples, her diplomatic skills making everyone feel welcome. "It wasn't about us," Han said finally. "Humans, I mean. We just happened to be the catalyst for something that was waiting to happen." The galaxy was ready for deeper connections. As the celebration continued around them, Han realized that the true story wasn't about why alien women dreamed of marrying human men. It was about how differences, whether biological, cultural, or philosophical, could bring beings together rather than drive them apart. The truth was universal, transcending species and space itself. Connection was the most powerful force in the galaxy.